Joining us right now is Washington Examiner Chief Political Correspondent Byron York. Morning, Byron.
Good morning, guys.
Well, your article from the 26th talks about these whispers, these questions that you're hearing whispered in the corridors of the Democratic side of Capitol Hill, people questioning Obama's competence, especially with regard to the VA debacle. Talk to me about this. What are you hearing?
These are not whispers. These are people who are really quite worried about the president's ability to get anything done after the rollout of Obamacare late last year, and now with the VA, and I might add with this astonishing bungle that revealed the identity of the CIA station chief in Afghanistan, which was just apparently a careless mistake. I mean, there are questions about that, how well the president can run the government. We've had a couple of polls, one from CNN, one from Quinnipiac, that showed majorities, over 50%, feel that the Obama administration is not up to running the U.S. government.
We have seen some reporting that suggests that some of these murmurs about the incompetence of the president are actually coming from Democrats. Has that been your experience?
That part is murmurs. I mean, you're not going to have a Democrat come out and say, this president just isn't up to the job.
I understand. So murmurs from the Democratic side, but
yes.
Have you personally had Democrats who approached you?
I have not personally spoken to a Democrat who said, I'm worried about whether he can run the government. I think the polls, which ask very specific questions, is the Obama administration competent, or do you trust the Obama administration to run the government effectively? I think those polls are pretty darn revealing.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned this bungle of the administration revealing the CIA station chief in Afghanistan. Yesterday, Brit Hume made the case that this is a much worse leak than the Valerie Plame incident. Are you hearing the same thing?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Valerie Plame, at the time her name was revealed in 2003, was working at CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia. She had once been a covert operative, but there was the CIA, as I remember, never showed any real damage that occurred as a result of this, and Valerie Plame was able to go on with her life, albeit being changed by writing a book and appearing in Vanity Fair. But this is the CIA operative in one of the hottest spots in the world.
Yeah.
And to reveal his name, we don't know what has happened as a result of this, but the administration says that this person and the family is safe, but we don't know.
In domestic politics, there are some in the GOP who are supposed to be sort of angling, agitating, trying to get party leaders to come up with some kind of contract with America for 2014. What are you hearing about this?
Well, there has been a debate inside the GOP for quite a while now about 2014, which is to what degree do we need to really lay out a positive agenda for ourselves? Can't we just say that Obamacare is a disaster and President Obama is a disaster, and aren't you tired of this guy, and so elect us? Can we do that, or do we have to actually lay out our plans for health care, for the economy, for other issues that voters are really concerned about? Now, what's happening is I think the lay out a plan group is winning now because I think they feel like a little air has gone out of their the Obamacare crusade. So they are winning the battle, but the question now is, okay, if we are going to have an agenda, do we actually need to write it out, maybe on a laminated card that we can hand people or not?
Yeah.
So that's unclear.
And are there disagreement points within the Republican Party? Is that part of the problem? They can't decide what they want to agree on?
Oh, well, absolutely. I mean, for example, take tax reform. How come that has never really happened in a big way? I mean, the Republicans can't really agree among themselves on that. So and why have the Republicans in the House never united behind a plan to replace Obamacare. I mean, you have all these competing plans, and you'll hear the top leaders in the Republican Party say, oh, it's great, don't we have all these great ideas? And you think, well, it's been years. Why haven't you whittled it down to what your alternative is and passed it? Well, they haven't done it because they don't agree.
Right now, the administration is making announcements about what they're going to do in Afghanistan. They say by the end of 2014, they'll draw down to 9,800. They say by 2016, interesting date there, they'll be out of Afghanistan. I guess the question that many of us are wrestling with, and I'd love your opinion about it, is, was this a decision made for political reasons or for national security reasons?
Well, I think it was made for both. I mean, you're right about 2016. It is an interesting date. We've heard a lot of criticism in the last 24 hours of the president's announcement, saying, well, you shouldn't ever announce the date that you're going to withdraw troops and that sort of thing. But it seems to me, I mean, we're in the 13th year of this war. The people who oppose the president's position on this, I think, should explain to us what goal would be accomplished by keeping the troops there a bit longer than the president says, what goal that has not been accomplished in the previous 13 years. I thought the one thing that was just telling about the president's remarks was where he said, you know, it's not our duty to make Afghanistan a perfect place. That's just not part of the game here.
Right.
And I think what he was essentially suggesting is that the Afghan mission had, over the last 13 years, kind of taken a turn into nation building and had lost some of its original post-September 11th focus, where the idea was to destroy terrorist havens and kill the people responsible for September 11th. And then it turns into we're making schools, we're working on rights for women and girls, we're doing all this stuff in Afghanistan, and you think, is that why we went there? So, I think the president is not going to suffer any adverse public reaction from taking troops out of Afghanistan after 13, 14 years there.
Byron York from the Washington Examiner is our guest. He, of course, their chief political correspondent. And let's talk politics in terms of the midterms. A lot of primaries are now in the books. How do you think the candidates are shaping up with regard to some of those hot races that we're seeing in those races in the Senate specifically that could turn the majority to the Republicans?
I think the biggest news is that the Republicans have a pretty good group of candidates this time. I mean, the whole news for bad news in the Senate in 2010 and 2012 was that the Republicans had the occasional clunker candidate, and the candidates mean everything. And they don't really have one of those just kind of embarrassing bad candidates. Most of them are pretty darn good. And, you've seen a Democratic comeback in a state like Arkansas. Remember, I think a lot of us were talking about Mark Pryor as if he were a dead man walking.
Not so much today.
No, we've seen a bunch of polls where I think I've had Republicans explain this to me. He said, we Republicans got in early on Mark Pryor. We hit him hard. He wasn't expecting it to be that early, but now they've finally kind of gotten off the mat and cleared their head, and they're fighting back. And it's going to be a very difficult race for Tom Cotton there in Arkansas. Not saying he won't win, but it isn't going to be a runaway. And I think we've seen a really tough situation. In Louisiana, you have a good candidate, Representative Bill Cassidy, but you have Mary Landrieu, able to just flex these muscles of, I'm the chairman of the Energy Committee, and I can bring all this stuff to Louisiana. And she's making a very powerful argument. So there's no guarantee of a lot of Republican victories here, but they do have good candidates, and Democrats are in a situation where they really have to defend themselves.
All right, Byron.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks a lot.